get started. It is wonderful to see how we are all from all over the world. We come from different cultures, different home languages, but we're here for one reason, because we want to become or to be the best possible instructors we can for our students. So thank you so much. Welcome everyone for joining us. Thank you for joining us today during this Launch and Learn Artificial Intelligence Series webinar. We're happy to have everyone here, and we hope that you'll be able to, as we normally do, we usually hope, valuable reflections and tips during this professional development initiative that we have planned for you. But before we begin, I'd like to share a few guidelines to ensure that everyone has a positive experience during the next hour. So kindly, please keep your microphone on mute to reduce distractions and to make sure that we clearly hear Dr. Bjornstad today. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat function to send them. I'll make sure that I will try to answer as many questions as we can during the webinar. And as we normally do with every webinar that we host at the Light Center, this session is being recorded for those who cannot attend this live training. So by participating, you agree to be recorded. And this recording, along with the slides and additional resources, will be sent in the next PD2Go newsletter by the end of November. So welcome to the second Professional Development Initiative of November, Artificial Intelligence and Assessment. During this session, facilitated by Dr. Chris Bjornstad, hopefully I pronounced your name a bit correctly, Light Center Director of Assessment, we will discuss how AI can be used to support assessment and evaluation. And we will learn about specific tools and techniques for using artificial intelligence in formative and summative assessment, as well as best practices for analyzing and interpreting assessment data. We are here to learn together. So if you have any questions, if you have tried any of these tools that Dr. Bjornstad will be sharing with us, feel free to share your experience with us. So welcome again. Thanks for being here, everyone. And Dr. Bjornstad, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining. Today, we're going to go over, here's my agenda. We talked about the purpose of this webinar. You'll be able to be familiar with AI and how it can be used in assessment, able to identify some of the applications used in assessment, and then we're going to discuss some of the benefits and challenges of using AI in assessment. Today's agenda will focus on, I'll do a brief history on of artificial intelligence. I'm assuming that most of you have some understanding or awareness of artificial intelligence, but I'll just provide just an overview anyways. We'll talk about the generative AI and applications, assessment and AI together, and then we'll do a breakout session to talk about your concerns with AI and its use in assessment, and then we'll wrap it up with questions. Okay, what is artificial intelligence? In the 1950s, a gentleman, Alan Turing, he was an English mathematician. He created this imitation game, which basically set forth a series of questions that researchers could ask a computer to determine whether or not the computer was generating authentic responses, or were these responses as part of a really related to the inputs of the developers or computer scientists. And if the computer could pass that test, then it had this leaning towards artificial intelligence. Now, it was a very subjective test, so there was a lot of questions and speculations around it. But that really laid the groundwork for this notion, this idea of artificial intelligence. In 1956, John McCarthy, a computer scientist, coined the term artificial intelligence. In 2004, he wrote an article where he provided a more formal definition of artificial intelligence. It's the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, especially intelligent computer programs. And then I would just add, for our purpose today, really computer applications, which have been really popular over the last decade or so. Even though this idea of artificial intelligence has been around since the 1950s, there's a lot of speculation about whether or not computers are really intelligent. Are they sentient? And do they have the ability to understand what they're exactly doing? If you've never heard of the Chinese room experiment or thought process, if you get a chance, look it up. It's really interesting, kind of a thought experiment about the idea of computers and whether or not they can actually generate thought. We won't do that for today, but if you get a chance, look it up sometime. Today, there are multiple ways we can think about artificial intelligence, including fictional interpretations. Not sure if all of you are familiar with this. Growing up, I watched the movie 2001: Space Odyssey. Really, really enjoyed it. It was my favorite movies of all time. And this is how an artificial intelligence computer on the ship. And this is just his expression here in the movie. If you've seen the movie, things didn't turn out so well for the humans on the spaceship. But this is what my first interpretation or thought was about artificial intelligence. And then in the 1980s, there was a really cool movie called The War Games came out. Again, another kind of interpretation, conceptualization of artificial intelligence. And then modern day applications of AI are Siri, and then Tesla, and then the iRobot. If you haven't had a chance to check out that iRobot, it's pretty cool. I have one myself, and I love the thing. It's great. Here, I created a timeline of artificial intelligence. Again, I think most of you are probably familiar with some of these key points here. I'm not going to go over all of them. These PowerPoint slides will be available to you at the end of the webinar. So if you want to go in and look at more some of these interesting time periods, you can do that. As I noted, in 1950, Alan Turing published his imitation game, setting the groundwork. The term was coined in 1956-57. First wave of AI in the late 50s through the early 70s. And then there was this period of low productivity, not a lot of interest in AI from a lot of folks. There were, high expectations for AI and computers, and then they just didn't meet those expectations. And the government pulled all their funding, so they call that an AI winter. In the late 90s, we had Deep Blue computer that would learn. They taught it how to play chess, and it beat the world chess champion at the time. And then 2011, we had the development of Siri. The 2014 is really when generative AI came onto the scene. Machines learning data, able to understand human language, and so on. 2022, we had ChatGPT and others like it come onto the scene. And then it's within the last couple of years, I feel like our AI applications have really become more and more popular in the arena of higher education, or in education in general. At the end of my timeline, I have this question mark, which really I'm just thinking about, okay, so where do we go from here? And one thing I thought was an interesting thing to look at here is this notion of the singularity. You may have heard of this idea where our current AI becomes this artificial general intelligence. And what they're theorizing is that the computers will be able to develop their own code and create other computers that can develop other computers and become really automated, and they'll be able to break away from human developments at that point, and self-sustaining. And, that's the way they look at it. And they think that this will be happening in 2045. And there are others who speculate it maybe even earlier as 2031. So computers making computers and really going out there and just kind of doing their own thing is a little scary. So it made me think of these two movies, The Matrix and The Terminator. So that's what I think of when I think of the singularity and this kind of breakaway from human control. Okay, so now we'll narrow our focus, our discussion a little bit on to talk about generative AI. Generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that can produce various types of content, including text, imagery, and audio. The rise in its popularity is driven by simplicity and the ability for consumers to create content in a matter of seconds. Over the last few years, it really, like I said, it's really become popular with all of us, where we can go on, log into computers, and go into Chat GPT and just type in and create content on our own. And that's really kind of pushed this whole thing forward. It's not new technology, this generative AI. It was first introduced in the 1960s in the form of chatbots. In 2014, there was a big breakthrough with generative AI. There was a new novel learning algorithm that was developed, allowed the user to create authentic images, videos, and audio, and so on. Also, within the last decade or so, there's been a huge improvement in computer power and, of course, technology with computers. They're able to reduce the amount of energy needed for our computers to operate and do what they can do. So that's helped to also promote the use of this AI, generative AI. Here's an interesting little picture I wanted to put up here for you all to look at. Just kind of breaks down the different levels of AI. So at the top, we have just the overarching artificial intelligence, theory and methods to build machines and think and act like humans. The next level, we have machine learning, the ability for computers to learn from experience or data. And then we go into deep learning, mimicking human brain using artificial neural networks, which then eventually help to develop the generative AI and make it more popular. With generative AI, there are various different types of applications these days. On this slide here, we're just looking at some general applications that you may have seen within the business world or other arenas, education as well. So there's applications out there that you can use to develop music. And each of these areas, I have links here. So when you get these slides, if you want to explore in more depth, you can do that. The business streamline operations by automating tedious tasks, such as report generation and data analysis. In the area of finance, it can create investment portfolios based on customer data and market trends. In marketing, create more targeted and personalized campaigns that resonate with individual customers. Language translation, develop models to cater to specific industries. And then one of the last ones I put on here was image and video generation. They use a chatbot to generate images or videos based on input data. Some applications within education, which are more relevant to what we do. AI uses data on past student performance to identify factors that can lead to success or failure. This can help teachers and administrators make data-driven decisions in order to improve student outcomes. And again, I just wanted to point out all of these applications have what they've really done is to help. They've reduced the amount of time it would take us to do something like this. And it allows us to do it pretty quickly, right? And with ease. So that's why they're so interesting and helpful in many ways. Correct writing errors, make recommendations to word usage, optimize content for improved search engines. And then last but not least on this slide is plagiarism detection, which we're all familiar with, I assume. Applications that can detect both students copying other students' work, which is just your basic plagiarism, or generating AI content plagiarism. The two most popular ones are Turnitin.com and then OpenAI Classifier also has a tool. I make a note here with OpenAI. They recently discontinued their tool. they found out that it was not very accurate. It was like 20% accurate. And so they ended up discontinuing it. And so I believe Turnitin is probably one of the more popular or most well-known ones that are used now for this detection. Some concerns with using AI applications, inconsistency in responses. I use ChatGPT and Bard. I haven't used Bard as much as ChatGPT, but what I find interesting is you can go in there and ask, use the same prompt, and both of these AI generated machines or applications will generate different responses. As a matter of fact, Bard would for some reason, generate twice as much content than ChatGPT did. And again, I'm not sure why, it just did. And there's also, the concern whether or not it's accurate, right? And that goes to the next point. There's a propensity to generate incorrect or misleading information. They call it hallucination in computer science terms. And I believe they're still trying to, work out the kinks on that and to try to make it so they don't hallucinate quite as much. But that is an issue with these AI applications. Unauthorized use of material or likeness can be a concern. Recently, the actors settled a big strike with Hollywood and the producers and whomever else over there. One of the big issues was the use of their likeness going forward in the future with movies and other types of media. They didn't want them to use their likeness without permission and so on. And last but not least, the overall concern with AI replacing jobs that are typically held by humans. Okay, so we talked a lot about AI. Now let's go to the other side of our focus today, which is assessment. And I'll provide just kind of overall view of assessment. We all know what it is, but let's just do a quick refresher anyways. Why do we do assessment? It helps us to determine how the class is doing as a whole. Helps you to identify any trends in the classroom or the students' abilities and ability to demonstrate those competencies. And then it can help teachers with lesson planning and implementation of curriculum. On the student side, students, when they get that feedback, the assessment feedback, either formative or summative, they know what they know, they know what they don't know, and they know how to proceed. And then last on here, assessment can increase student motivation or self-efficacy. So those are all good things. Now, let's bring the two together using AI in assessment. When I was doing my research on this, I came across different ways to look at assessment and AI. And for me, I kind of divided into two different dimensions. There is adaptive learning, analyzing students' passive performance to develop adaptive learning plans that can help students learn more effectively and efficiently. And then there's also adaptive assessment, analyzing student responses to adjust the difficulty level of the subsequent questions, ensuring that each student is challenged appropriately. So with those two dimensions, there are different types of applications that have been developed over the years that you may have become aware of. There are AI applications that can help with reading fluency, use a combination of generative AI and speech recognition that provides instant feedback to students or learners of a new language. And here's a couple examples of Soapbox Fluency and Amara Learning. My daughter uses Duolingo, which is also a foreign language app. I'm suspecting that there's some AI in there as well. When you're using the app, and I've used it a few times, you go in there and you start learning the language, and your responses, the app will adjust and move you along at a certain pace depending how well you're doing with your responses. So I think it's fascinating. Sometimes I think that Duolingo keeps you in there too long, and they're just trying to stretch out that time period. So I have my monthly fees are longer, but for the most part, they do a pretty good job with how they progress you through the course. Applications they're used for testing purposes. You can create test questions and develop questions that are culturally appropriate or accommodate for individuals with disability. There's test portal. I was trying it out earlier, and if we have some time, I may just be able to show you a few examples. Essay scoring, formative feedback. You can submit an essay through the AI assessment tool and provide you a set of suggestions that the student can use to make improvements. Solving math problems, there's a few tools out there. You can insert a math equation and it'll help you to solve it. And some math will actually break it down step by step on how to solve it. This is a Chat GPT. Actually, you can put a math problem in there, and that's just a simple way of doing it with Chat GPT. But there's other ones like Smoden and Photomath. And if you haven't figured it out already, if you're a math person, there's also there's phone apps where you can take pictures of equations. It'll solve it for you. So that's pretty neat. I've used that multiple times with my daughter. Okay, what are the benefits of AI and assessment? AI can provide support to faculty and help guide decision making. It can reduce the amount of time, reduce the administrative tasks and decisions that are time consuming, provide additional opportunities for teachers to focus on learning and student experience. Now we're going to do a breakout session that Ev is going to help facilitate. I'd like you all to kind of get together and think about the question. I know you probably have talked about concerns with AI in general before, but now I want you all to think about what are your concerns with AI and assessment specifically, and how it's used, what may be, how can it be used inappropriately, or what are the concerns for the quality of education or the student experience. I believe Ev's going to break us off into rooms. Is that correct?
Okay, how many rooms do you want me to open? We are 27 participants, so we need to leave a group here. Maybe two groups, and then we leave a group here in the main room.
What's your typical size do you guys normally do?
I would say 5, 6. It depends on the type of conversation again. So let's do 3 groups, and then we leave one here. So we're going to break the whole group in 4, but one group is going to stay in the main room for recording purposes.
Okay.
Okay, just give me a sec.
How much time are we going to give everybody?
There you go. I'm opening the 3 rooms, and the ones who are not assigned to any breakout room are going to stay in this main room for discussion and to be recorded. Say 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
10 minutes. Cool.
Okay, 10 minutes. Perfect.
Are the rooms
Everyone
open?
has joined the rooms.
Oh,
okay.
So the people here are in the room. Yeah.
Okay, I'll open it up. So, hi everybody. So, what I wanted to talk about today is think about how. Well, I know that there's been a lot of discussion lately about AI and with Turnitin, and whether or not that works and how it works and so on. So now let's think about, we can talk more about that. That's fine. I believe there are some concerns about that. But what other types of concerns might we have about using AI in assessment?
Given the propensity it has to hallucinate, that would be my concern. If you were talking about it with math and you can take a picture and it solves it, but does it apply the proper rule? So if someone just put 4 minus 3 times 2 divided by 1, will it do PEMDAS or will it just do it in sequence left to right? I've never tried it, so.
Be real careful about using it for math, depending on the types of formulas you're using, because it hallucinates with math just as efficiently as it does with language.
Hence the reason for my question. That is my concern. And often with assessment, we're making comparisons. And so how does it do that? It would have to interpret what we wrote or entered into the fields. So it's an interesting thought. I just don't understand process.
Yeah. Is there also
even the, like you said, the turn it in, it's still not accurate because it can't discriminate between grammar correction and reporting and pulling off of Bing somewhere.
Yeah. And then when I was doing the research on this, one of the concerns was that we'll have this over reliance on AI, and that what'll happen is that faculty may become more skeptical of it because it generates these responses, but sometimes it doesn't tell you why, what's going on, what was the rationale for it, and so on. So, there could be a concern with it being, obviously it's not reliable, and then that'll decrease the usage of it as well. Is there a way for faculty members or math teachers, for that matter, to evaluate students' math abilities using AI? I know there's some apps out there, but I haven't used any of them in my experience.
The other thing is, and we know it was built using biased and flawed data, but it also uses data that's been entered into it. So if people put in flawed information, it becomes part of the information it pulls from. So I just wanted to add that. It still goes to the question of how do we use it better.
So is it like a Wikipedia problem? Is that right?
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is, Chris. The problem is that fact checking an AI, you don't have a crowdsourced group of fact checkers going in and auditing the models that these applications are being built on. The other thing that's going on is the pure come on, just a minute. I have a big black cat who wants to help join the conversation. Probably have better ideas and answers to this than we do. Yes, Mr. Wiggins. The thing is, the number of applications that are being built and the ease with which these applications can be built is astonishing right now. It is incredibly easy it's easier to build an AI application than it is to build a standard mobile application right now. You go onto Hugging Face, you pull a model of your choice, or you use your own data, and there's an application that you can use to feed your own metadata into, and this is what's coming before the end of the year, are bespoke executive assistant models for all of us that are riding on our phones that we can ask. They will know us inside and out because we've fed all our own personal data into them, and they'll be able to augment our lives in a very personal way. But that's off the topic of assessment. I don't know. I know for a stone cold fact that it's becoming well over half the time that I spend grading capstones, trying to discern. And oftentimes it doesn't take that long because I know my students very well, but I spend a lot of time trying to explain why they shouldn't use AI to fix their composition, to fix their grammar, syntax, punctuation, everything else. But why? Everyone else is, I'm using this at work. This is what we do to fix this. Why shouldn't I do it here? So that's what we're running up against.
Okay. What I want to ask is, what are the privileges and the limitations of professors in assessments utilizing AI?
I think that's a question for you, Chris.
Can you ask the question again? I'm sorry.
Okay, now what I'm saying is that what are the privileges and the limitations of the professors with the assessment and AI?
That's a good question. Well, we've been talking a little bit about some of the concerns or limitations at this point. And then I think we touched on some benefits of it for using it. But, you know, this is relatively new to me as well, even though I'm a professional or, you know, I guess expert in assessment. Incorporating this AI dimension, it's a whole new world that I'm still trying to figure out how to begin this journey with using AI and what that looks like. So at this point, I don't know the full the scope of those privileges or and so on.
Yeah, it looks very interesting. Professor Lipo also mentioned about comparing, which is also contrasting. And the other gentleman was talking about evaluations of the capstones or comprehensive exams. So what do we do in this case? What's our role?
Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sitting on a committee right now that's been charged with answering this question, and I'm beginning to regret it. I've been looking at other schools in the UC system, at Stanford, at some of the major tech schools. What concerns me is the trend that people, and I've heard this in-house and I've heard this other places where, as of this moment, faculty are, if there's a 50% or 100% AI score, as we haven't turned it in, it's an automatic fail. And some instructors don't give second chances. Personally, I think that is a bit heavy-handed, especially considering the student body that we have. So the university definitely needs to, and we especially, I mean, we really need to come up with a set of reasonable guidelines that we can give faculty and that we can give students, because it has to be both, so that we all are on the, no pun, same page, and so that they know what the guardrails are, and we know that, past a certain percentage. I mean, believe it or not, it is still possible to turn in an assignment right now with a 0 AI percentage score. And that's something that we have to add to the weight of whatever ruling we decide on, or where we come down on this as far as usage. My 2 cents.
Nick, you said you were on a committee. Was that a Westcliff committee or another institution?
It's faculty senate.
Oh, gotcha. All right.
Yeah. but I am on other groups outside the university who are discussing this as well, just in my spare time. But there's a lot of really clever people, much brighter than me, who are struggling with this, trying to figure out what the answer is, to if there is an answer, and it may be a bespoke. There may not be a one size fits all. Again, I go back to, especially considering the nature of our student population, we're going to have a lot more students whose, English is their second, third, fourth language, and you were talking about Duolingo. It's so easy.
Yeah.
To have this thing translate for you and to clean up your grammar, syntax, punctuation, everything else. So.
Yeah, and back to my earlier reference to the Chinese room model or perspective. Just because you can recite a language, it doesn't really mean you fully understand the language, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with
if I may add, I copied the response from a student to ChatGPT, and I put the question that I had posted, and ChatGPT gave me identical answer to what the student had posted. Although, as you have mentioned correctly, it was zero AI, artificial intelligence used. But when I saw that ChatGPT is giving me the identical answer to what the student posted, I realized, and I said, please do it again. It's okay for you to use it to get information, but copying it word for word is not acceptable. You can paraphrase it, and that worked for me.
Yeah, that's funny. Tatiana brought up an interesting question about creativity, right? Like, how can AI measure creativity, or what's the extent that they can do that at this point? I don't know, but that would be really interesting to look into that, and the ability for AI to assess a student's creativity and whether or not it can, right?
It can compare and contrast, but it can't discern. It's at least that. I just put a link in for another resource to, if you have a question about whether or not something is AI generated, instead of going to the big 3 or 4, you can go to GPT-0, and sometimes it will give you a more reliable response. As far as measuring creativity, Tatiana, that's for creative. I hope that it can't. I hope that it never will be able to do that, because that means that we are still useful as profs. We're still necessary. We still have the nuance and ability to discern, moments of genius. I think the moment that we have an AI application that is able to do that, we will have firmly crossed the singularity, and AGI will be a thing, and Kurzweil will finally be validated. And I think that after that moment happens, we'll have months before we know what our fate is going to be. Not to be too dark about it, but just saying.
There's an application out there, I think it's called Dolly, right? You can create images.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, you can manipulate, or you can change those images. I have never tried it, but so you can put in an input, it'll create an image for you, but then you can go back and put in additional inputs or criteria, and it'll revise that image. And I'm wondering, so what point does your creativity, right, kind of be recognized, or is part of that process, or is it never really a factor?
You don't even have to put a prompt in now. You can just talk to it, GBTV or Vision, or Voice, not Vision, Voice rather. You can tell it to make you something, and there's already a very popular student in the state of Colorado who won a state fair art show with painting that was, you've heard of this, that was generated by AI, and he got a blue ribbon, and then it was found out that it was AI generated. Caused a huge stir in a small town state fair. I'll tell you what, mister. But it's you're going out into copyright and intellectual property and what constitutes reality, and then you get into companies like Midjourney with the unholy blending of AI and breaching the uncanny valley as far as visual effects, where we no longer can tell the difference between something that's AI generated and quote reality, whatever that is. And so then we're getting into deep fakes and all sorts of fun stuff. So we've got a wild ride ahead of us. It's going to be fun until it isn't.
I think one of the differences is if you have the AI do everything, so it creates the picture and then you tell it what to edit, it's still being edited by, whereas, and that's, you know, the questionable, where it can it be copywritten or trademarked or not. But if you have it create the image and then you pull it into a photo editing and make the changes, now you have done that.
That's true. That's a good point. Yep.
Yeah, but you're using AI tools in order to make those edits now. That's what I believe out in your neck of the woods. There are people walking in the streets with picket signs saying, "You shall not replace me."
Yeah.
Well, not anymore. They came to terms.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's
you know, we're trying to actually make a virtual copy of Dr. Johnson, but you know, it's not working. He's just, you know, we can't make him nicer. Just kidding.
broke the mold.
They
Oh,
tried
yeah,
giving me more hair and it didn't work either. So
yeah, Tatiana makes a great point too about AI is really a tool, right? It's in the process, and not the creator. That's an interesting question. Yeah.
well, it puts things together. And in doing that, it's creating, but it's not creating out of thin air.
Yeah.
Yet.
Right.
Yet.
Right.
A couple of people have heard this story. One of our program advisory council new members owns a high-end bike shop, $10,000 mountain bikes. And they used to go out with a photo crew and people and take pictures for their marketing materials. And in 10 minutes, I created images using DALL-E that had perfect definition in the calf muscle, as if someone was really riding the bike. You know, which saves a lot of money on the budget for the, you know, the photographers and all the time and possible injuries as they fall off the bike on the side of a mountain. And
Calf models.
yeah, calf models too. But I'm sure it pulled a picture from somewhere, an image, and but yeah, there's a lot of people using the tool incorrectly. You know, we've got all the lawyers who are trying to file briefs created by AI that are getting, you know, possibly losing their licenses, but
kicked back. I heard that too.
yeah.
I think that there's going to be a series, just like there were a few years ago in all the professional scientific journals, where a significant number of published peer-reviewed articles are going to have to be redacted or withdrawn. I think that the same thing is going to happen with doctoral thesis in anything that's happened in the last, well, since basically the beginning of this year going forward. I think everything is going to have to be very carefully audited to determine if it was generated using some sort of AI, because it is possible. It is possible.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is you don't want it to build references or annotated bibliography for you because it'll make stuff up. That's always fun. So,
Okay,
the ultimate
I think we're
librarian.
waiting for everybody to get back in the room, and we'll proceed.
Everyone is not back in the room.
Okay, great. I just wanted to recap, just kind of some main points that we made in our group. We talked a little bit about the Turnitin and plagiarism, AI detector, hallucinations, and then we brought up this interesting point about the importance of universities adopting a usage policy, and I think that's spot on. How the expectations for our students, and I thought we had something like that for Westcliff. An AI usage policy, but maybe we don't, and I saw that somewhere else.
No, we do.
Oh, we do. All right. Okay, good. Thank you. Then that made me thinking about, well, when we start getting more and more advanced tools to use for assessment purposes, there'll have to be some guidelines at some point with those as well, right? For the faculty to make sure that where everybody's on the same page with what's okay to use and what's not okay to use. So that's my thought on that. How about some others? What did you guys all talk about?
We talk on the same topic, so we were in the room for people, and we discussed also, it is that the challenge how even if we use AI in assessment, how just we make sure that this is papers created by the student themselves. The question was, can AI really help or assist the faculty in their assessment? And while we are talking, I found this article, I put it in the chat. And this just article was in 2021. This is before talking about ChatGPT. They address the same issue and how we can use AI in assessment. However, the challenge now, because ChatGPT was just developed in October last year, and this has really changed the mentality, how really we need to assess the student's paper. It's a challenge because we don't know. There is no guarantee that this is the student's paper. And it is a good article if anyone would like to see. But this is old, considering for IT, it's old, 2021.
Did you say you posted that in the chat?
Yeah, can't you see it? I posted the link. I can.
Sure.
Okay, I will post it again here.
Anybody else want to add anything?
It was in the breakout room chat. I think the breakout room chat is separate from the main room chat.
I posted the link again here.
Okay. All right, we got about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure I finish up some last slides here. So we had the breakout room to talk about what are concerns with AI and assessment. Here, I just wanted to highlight a couple that I came across. There is a concern that there'll be an over-reliance on AI, which, as we've discussed, is unreliable for the most part. And this can diminish the value of faculty's professional expertise, right? And ultimately reduce the quality of the education. If we're using the plagiarism detection application all the time, that'll just take away from our own professional input and expertise. Which at this point we're not doing that, right? Because we know how concerning that detection application is. I came across an article where it talks about researchers are designing new systems that'll help explain, I think I already mentioned this, the rationale, the explanations of the AI generated outputs as a way to increase, confidence, I guess, in the usage, and that help with educate the faculty and improve reliability is what I put here. Using AI can shift accountability and liability of the assessment grading process from the professional, which is us, to the app developers. And this may impact the student learning experience. Have this tendency to move away from like, hey, that's not me, giving you that grade. That's the application. right? I'm sorry, I can't help you, but the app did that. So we don't want to get to that place either. And then a final bullet point: overuse of AI can impact the personal relationship between teacher and student. As you all know, when you're going through and working with students, providing that formative feedback, either through quizzes or other ways, that's where we connect with our students and develop those relationships. And if you step back from that and start relying on AI to do your assessment, that can severely impact that relationship. And students want that relationship. They want to interact with the professionals. They want to learn, and they don't want to interact with AI necessarily. Okay, that was my last slide. Any final thoughts? I just wanted to think of have this final closing argument or point here. We talked a lot about the plagiarism detection because that's really the big focus right now, I believe. But I'm concerned of what's coming down the road, because more and more of these apps are going to come out. Students will have more tools and applications to use in their education, and we'll have to be on our guard to make sure that they're producing quality and authentic work, right? And this plagiarism, AI detection is just the first of many other things or concerns that we'll have to deal with in the future. That's my opinion.
Professor, I have a question, if you don't mind. And this is something that was brought up in our room. We had concerns regarding the appropriateness of AI and differentiated instruction. So, for example, in the English language classroom, we have students with different language abilities. So can we use AI actually to differentiate assessment for our students?
Yeah, I don't see why you can't. Again, I don't know if there's some written policy document or procedural thing that we're not supposed to use that, but I don't see why you couldn't. Again, it's important that you look at what the tool, the application, do the research to make sure that it's reliable, valid, right? And then my recommendation is that you speak with your program chair, your dean, to let them know your thoughts and what you're doing before you proceed. That way, they may be able to provide some additional insight or help you address any concerns that may happen or may arise because when you're using that.
Chris, if I could just chime in real quick. So, Professor Atwee, I would advocate that we try. I think one of the things that AI does allow us to do is exactly that. How can we differentiate and personalize instruction differently and level the playing field, right? Like, how are we giving access to people that may not usually have access to that kind of content? And I love the idea. One of the things I value so much about Westcliff is this idea that we give people who may not have opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. So why not explore and see what happens? And you won't know unless you try. If you're too fearful to try, you'll never know. And I think it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. And let's all realize that we're instructors. And as instructors, we're practicing the art of teaching. Teaching is both an art and a science, and it's not going to be perfect all the time. So why not go out there and practice and let your students know, hey, I've got this, I'm going to try, let's see what happens, and gather their feedback too. I would advocate powerfully that you go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
Chris, can I also?
I'm sorry. If there's another question, go ahead. Yeah.
It's not a question, it's an observation, because I think this is really appreciate this. And the question in my mind is, what is our role as educators in a world where AI becomes more central to what we do? And so you think of assessment, right? And you think of validating how the assessment tools are put together, how they're used. Also, how might they strengthen or enhance or set up a situation where our time, the time that we get to spend with the students and without the students, in more valuable ways. So it's really a question, not necessarily something, that it would open up another 17 hours of discussion. But just when I sit back and think about this, I guess I'm turning the ball around a little bit and saying, hey, there's also opportunities in here that, as Jody kind of alludes to, for us to iterate as well in some really interesting ways. So I throw that out there as a thought.
Thank you. My only add on to that is that, obviously we all think about our students and that personal relations we have with our students, and thinking about their experience and making sure that is a positive experience, and thinking about that first and foremost when we come to the idea of adopting the different tools or applications with assessment or any other ways. But that's how I look at it. Does this improve the ultimate experience for the student or our relationship with that student? If it detracts from it, then probably it's not a good idea to use or limit its usage, right? That's what I would think.
Any other questions from the audience?
I just want to share a new academic AI that I recently came across. It's called Chat PDF. It writes the literature review for the students. You just upload the PDF. It comes out with a few suggestions, but you can ask any question. You can ask for the results. You can ask for the summary. You can ask for the research method. And Chat PDF.
Thank you. This brings up an interesting, these are really fascinating links and resources. Thank you all very much for putting this in here and contributing today. I'm going to develop a list of resources for us all to use if somebody hasn't already started that, because I think it would be really helpful to have a kind of a document or some sort of cheat sheet where if you're thinking about using a new app, or if you're thinking about using an app, in different ways you can use apps, and language, writing, and so on. But anyways, I'm going to work with some folks to get that list put together.